Today for Full Album Friday, we're going to check out one of my all-time favorite records. We're going back to 1969 to look at King Crimson's In the Court of King Crimson. If you were to accuse King Crimson for having too much talent for one band, you'd have a really good case there, and you could definitely use this album as the perfect evidence. The musicianship at every turn on this record is absolutely phenomenal. And when you add that to the massive amount of innovation and influence that this record had on later bands, as well as the present music scene at that time, the music and this album move into a classification that is truly impossible to define. Call it prog rock, call it art rock, call it post-psych, call it pre-metal, call it whatever you want. But the reality is, on so many levels, no other album in history can even touch In the Court of King Crimson. Across the album, you'll find elements of jazz, electronica, classical, blues, and plenty of rock and roll to go along with it. And the band mixes them together in patterns and sounds that had never before even been conceived of. Much of this innovation and overall sound comes from the hands of guitar god Robert Fripp, and it's his own deep avant jazz roots that makes this sound so unique. That's not to say he can't shred or pull off a killer riff, because there's plenty of those on this album. But at the same time, you can definitely hear the fact that his sound doesn't really come from blues-based as most of his peers did. When you add in Ian MacDonald to the list, the sound is impossible to duplicate, as there didn't seem to be an instrument he couldn't play and play perfectly. And this really allowed the band to create soundscapes of every type, making the overall album sound like nothing else. But it may be drummer Michael Giles that's actually the most impressive on the record, as he's able to turn the band on a dime, shifting the tempo whenever he wants and wherever he wants. And this gives each song a level of excitement and intensity that remains unrivaled to this day. Working across these engaging, complex musical backgrounds is none other than bassist and vocalist Greg Lake. And it's the way that his voice often adds this dark, almost spacey feel that launches these songs into the stratosphere. There's just this sense of the dramatic on every single song, and when you couple that with the intensity of the overall music, you can quickly understand why King Crimson remains so revered all these years later. From the rather somber epitaph to the wild, iconic 21st century schizoid man, this album really has it all. And the sound they create here shows what it means to be years ahead of your time. The album swells and crashes in grand fashion, and these are the types of songs that need to be played over and over and over again. Because honestly, they're just so damn good, you can never get enough of them. But perhaps the most staggering thing to consider is the fact that this is King Crimson's first album, their debut record. And to have this level of musicianship, creativity, and performance on your first time out, there's simply no words to describe that sort of achievement. In the Court of King Crimson is beyond legendary, it's beyond iconic, it stands in a category all its own. And if somehow this record is not in your collection, honestly, you've really blown it. So make sure you change that right now. Thank me later.